Which players should you be targeting on your Dynasty waiver wires this week? All that and more on today's Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Dynasty is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick between 2 and 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how's it going today?
It's going well. We got one week in the books. How fun is that? Action-packed day on Sunday, of course. Those 1 o'clock games were nuts, and
yeah,
I think we know more than we used to.
I think so. I'm not for sure though. Your team was certainly one that was under the microscope for a lot of reasons. In that crazy overtime game, nobody wanted to win that. Multiple missed kicks before your guys pulled off the upset. And Naja Harris, we'll talk a little bit more about him today. Had the injury. Sounds like it's not going to be too bad. Kind of a best case scenario for him, but you need to be sure you're prepared if he does miss any time. But overall a big opener for the Steelers, and a great week overall. So glad to have football back.
No doubt. So lots to discuss here, right? Let's go.
Definitely. Yeah. As we always do on Tuesdays this season, we started this last week and we'll continue it every week this season. We will talk Dynasty transactions. We'll focus on Dynasty waiver wire. We'll spend a lot of our time there. Players you should be targeting when waivers run each week. We'll also have a little trade talk each week as well. It's kind of a weird waiver wire week, Matt. Typically week 1 is a big one in Dynasty waiver wires, fantasy waiver wires in general, because you get those surprise performances from week 1. You get the big injuries from week 1. And, we certainly had some of both of those, but not really to a major degree. I mean, the Dak Prescott injury is obviously a tough one. Sure. He's going to miss some time. I don't know if you want to chase that backup quarterback. And of course there are rumors that maybe Dallas does something else and looks at a trade. So that's not really a player even in Superflex that you want to go all in on. And
no,
there's no clear, obvious target when it comes to the waiver wire this week.
No, not yet. Not this week. I mean, we know they're coming in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure, but week 1 is always a great spot usually to have the first pick in your selection for these free agents. But I mean, in terms of auctions and whatnot, I don't know that any of these guys I'd be putting a lot of my fab money into.
Yeah, same here. We'll go position by position here. We'll look at all 4 spots, talk about some of the options you might want to look for on the waiver wire. But again, we got to make it obvious here, make it clear here. There's no definite guy that you've got to go all in on. As you said, quarterback, you do have Cooper Rush, expected to be the Cowboys starter for potentially the next month, maybe longer. Dak Prescott is set to undergo surgery, and the reports say that we will basically know more after that surgery is completed. Of course, fantasy managers and certainly Dallas Cowboy fans are hoping that it's not long that Dak is out.
Right.
Marcus Mariota, another guy who performed well.
Are we in agreement though on Rush in terms of even super flex or 2 quarterback? Yeah, if I have an open spot, I'll throw him on there, but I'm not investing heavy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's obvious how tough it is to get a quarterback in those super flex leagues, where, in a lot of cases, maybe even a guy like Rush was already on a roster potentially in deep leagues. But yeah, pick him up, but he's definitely not an all-in guy. I mean, my expectations are pretty low for him, honestly, and really for that offense moving forward until we do see Dak Prescott back on the field.
The offense is pretty bad with Dak.
Yeah, no kidding. That was rough.
Yeah,
that was rough. Marcus Mariota had a solid day, 215 passing yards. Didn't throw a passing touchdown, but did have 72 rushing yards and ran for a score as well. That helped him to quarterback one status. He was a top 12 quarterback on the week, and he's a guy certainly in one quarterback dynasty leagues, maybe even in some shallow super flex leagues, is out there on the waiver wire. Another guy, though, I'm not willing to push all the chips in on. I expect, I still expect we're going to see Ritter at some point, but Mariota had a solid opening week.
Yeah, and I give the Falcons all the credit in the world. They were highly competitive in this one. I think they're a well-coached team, but I'm with you. I think Ritter at some point will get an opportunity, whether that's from injury or just to see what he can do late in the year. But I think the encouraging thing here is I think it's pretty obvious that they plan on running Mariota a lot. I mean, he may not end up with 72 yards every week, but if he has 8 to 10 carries, that's very fantasy relevant.
Yeah, ended up with 12 carries. I believe that was the second most on the week, second or third most on the week for quarterbacks. It is worth noting, though, that Damien Williams, the veteran running back, left that game early. So you figure if Williams is in, if they have all three running backs active, that maybe Mariota doesn't see quite as many carries there. Mm-hmm. Let's move over to the running back position. We already talked about the Naja Harris injury. Fortunately for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for Naja Harris dynasty managers, that does not seem serious. Sounds like he might miss a week at most. Again, worth noting that basically very similar injury, it sounds like, to what he was dealing with in training camp. So if you don't have Jaylen Warren already, if he's still available, I still feel like he's a priority add. Is that how you look at it, Matt?
I do too. I mean, he's clearly the two. He was very impressive in every practice I watched, as well as preseason. He's a good football player. He catches the ball reasonably well. Protection was a bit of an issue this past week, but he's the two. So yes, if he's your two or the guy getting that kind of workload, you want to pick him up.
Yeah, basically we're 1 week into the season and Naja Harris already has 2 injuries. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, go get his backup. Speaking of a guy with injuries, and unfortunately this is kind of how it's gone in this guy's short career, Elijah Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers, a player that had such an impressive rookie season last year, but a big part of that rookie season is he was constantly in and out of the lineup. And now he's got a knee injury that is reportedly going to keep him out up to 2 months. This could be a tough one to find these backups on the waiver wire because, honestly, everybody kind of saw this coming, right? I don't know. I don't even know if injury prone is the thing, but if it is, Elijah Mitchell is that, because he missed so much time with multiple injuries last year, missed time in training camp with an injury, and now it's another one. Jeff Wilson is, I would say, next in line to see significant work for the 49ers. He might be out there, the veteran running back, but the 2 rookies are the ones I'm a little more interested in if they're somehow available. Jordan Mason and TDP, Ty Davis-Price. What's your thoughts on the 49er backfield, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it always just feels so temporary. But if you have 1 week where that there's a lead guy, until that guy gets hurt, whether it was Mostert or Mitchell, like you said, they just seem to look for backs that run really fast in a straight line and smash into things and don't last. That's the style of backs they seem to like. I do think it's noteworthy that Davis-Price was not active this past week. Yep. It was just Wilson. So But I like his style a lot. I really liked him coming out of school. So I'm going to jump in on Davis Price. And Wilson's pretty pedestrian for me, but it looks like he's probably the 2. So that just has value. So now he's the 1.
Right. Jordan Mason, the undrafted rookie, was actually was active on Sunday ahead of Ty Davis Price. So that's not a great
that's
sign.
A special teams thing, but I don't know that.
Yeah, I would assume as well, but definitely not a good thing to be that healthy scratch in your potential debut. Other running backs to look for: Rex Burkhead saw the bulk of the work for the Texans. Dontrell Hilliard looks like the clear backup in Tennessee. Got some receiving work. Also, Jamal Williams, always undervalued. He scored a couple times. And Eno Benjamin is the backup to have in Arizona. When we come back, we'll take a look at some wide receivers and tight ends worth looking for on your waiver wire.
Yeah, I told you guys about Prize Picks before, and Ryan mentioned that, at the beginning of the show about Prize Picks. Well, I made some bucks on Prize Picks this weekend. I mean, I hit the over on A.J. Brown. I hit the over on Pat Mahomes. So I am into this. It's a great situation that you guys need to check out. I mean, it is. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players, and you basically go say they set a line. Is this guy going to score more or less than their Prize Pick projection? And you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus a projection. So if you really think you have a inside line on some of these things, and the NFL, of course, everybody knows, but if you happen to be great at cricket or Euro basketball or disc golf or MMA or tennis or some of these things that aren't bet on as well, you can make a real fortune. And of course, they have NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, PGA, college sports, women's college sports, soccer, all the above, NASCAR. So entries can be made in like 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, which is always a problem with some of these situations, and it's not at all with Prize Picks. It's currently operational in over 30 states as well as in Canada. So this is what you do. You download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code Locked On, all one word, all caps. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks give you $100. If you deposit $75, Prize Picks gives you $75. So again, use our promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Another product I want to tell you about is one that I've really been into, and it's Athletic Greens. And it's just a great way to get nutrients into your body very easily. And I use it every day, and it's super easy. I've felt much, much better. My digestive health is obviously better, a lot more energy. I feel like I'm more focused. And, so there's a ton of different ways that they offer, tons of different cool stuff for you. It's less than $3 a day. You're getting different supplements, all in one nutritional insurance. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews recommended by professional athletes. I mean, it's a sustainable way of just making yourself more healthy. And they've also donated over $1.2 million to kids this past year as well. So here's what you got to do. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. All one word, NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
We are back. Let's continue our waiver wire talk. We mentioned some quarterbacks and running backs you want to check for on those dynasty waiver wires prior to that information Matt shared. Let's move over to the wide receivers, tight ends next. A couple of actually 3 surprise guys who look like the wide receiver ones on their team, at least through this first week, Matt. Let's start with the veteran Sterling Shepard. And the talent of this guy is no surprise. He's been around a while. We kind of know what he is, but coming back from that injury, being active in week one, honestly, I thought his career was probably over when he suffered that injury late last season, and he was back 71 yards and a touchdown. Looks like the top option early for the Giants. Of course, we kind of know Kenny Golladay is in the doghouse there.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney is right beside him because he was the 5th or 6th option on that team. I think Toney only played 7 snaps on Sunday. Wan'Dale Robinson, the rookie that everyone seemed to like, got hurt early in the game. He's out a couple weeks at least. So Sterling Shepard, almost by default, is the guy to have there. And like I said, maybe some people in your dynasty league kind of gave up on him after that injury. I know I did. So he could be out there. For the Browns, Donovan Peoples-Jones. The stat line on its own, not super impressive. 6 catches for 60 yards. What stood out to me here, though, is he saw 11 targets, by far the leader for the Browns. What's going on with my guy Amari Cooper there, Matt?
Yeah, I always thought Amari Cooper was a little bit overrated to begin with. And I think Peoples-Jones is a height, weight, speed guy that's clearly the number 2 there. He's a big body guy that can get downfield. I'm certainly interested in Peoples-Jones, especially, since we're talking dynasty here, Watson will be back and the offense will be better. So you're kind of buying low and biding your time. But in the meantime, he sees the field a lot. And if he starts to get 7 to 11 targets or so, that's exciting. I'm also in on Shepard, but I've bid on that before, but you can get him pretty darn cheap. I think he's still a good football player, but you just need to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think the one I'm most intrigued with is this next guy, Kyle Phillips, the rookie for the Tennessee Titans. It was Phillips, not Treylon Burks, not Robert Woods, not Austin Hooper, who was the leading receiver for Tennessee in week 1. 6 catches, 66 yards, saw 9 targets as well. I don't necessarily see Phillips as a guy with huge upside, but definitely can play a role for that Tennessee Titans team that is pretty thin at receiver. Of these 3 wide receivers that we've mentioned, he would be the one I want the most.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's the youngest. He's got the least in front of him. I don't think it's super far-fetched to say he may lead the Titans in receptions. Just that style of play, get it out quick, slot machine. Their line isn't great. Drive the ball down the field, get it out of Tannehill's hands quickly. Yeah, I think he's a valuable dude that might end up being a consistent flex type of guy.
Let's move over to the tight end position, Matt, and nothing's really changed with Taysom Hill's role except for his position designation on most fantasy sites. He is a tight end now, not a quarterback as he was listed previously. And one thing, people seem to hate Taysom Hill, and part of the reason is he steals touchdowns from whether it was Drew Brees back in the day or Alvin Kamara, whoever it might be. He's viewed as kind of that touchdown thief. But at the same time, he was never a guy that you could really start because you weren't going to plug him in at quarterback over a true starting quarterback. But now that he's a tight end, I think he's a lot more appealing. He ends up with just 1 catch for a touchdown. Also had a touchdown run. Taysom Hill, wow, what a game he had. And what are we going to do with him? He didn't necessarily have that volume that we can count on, but every time he gets the ball, he seems to make a play.
Yeah, Sean Payton knows a thing or two and was super infatuated with this guy. Do we think he's going to throw a couple passes every game? I don't know, probably. But more so than that is if he's a goal line runner or a short yardage guy, he's going to find the end zone every other game or so. And we know that has some standalone value just in itself. Catches 3 or 4 balls in addition to that. There's just a lot of paths for him to score you fantasy points. It does kind of feel like cheating, but I'll throw him in my tight end room,
Yeah, I think I misspoke there also on Hill. He did just have the one rushing touchdown, only one catch that was not for a touchdown. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, it does feel a little bit like a cheat code, but hey, I'm willing to take it, especially as ugly once again as tight end was in week
Oh,
one.
good point.
With we had guys who were tight end ones on the week who didn't even hit double digit fantasy points. So once again, I think we're in for another year of ugly tight end play from a fantasy perspective. Next two guys on the list, one of Taysom Hill's teammates here. Neither of these guys had huge stat lines necessarily, but I think the usage was important. Joann Johnson in New Orleans, 5 targets, caught a couple of them for 43 yards, and Kylan Granson, second-year tight end for Indianapolis, 7 targets, caught 3 of those for 22 yards. So a couple other guys that you should be looking for as you check out your waiver wire this week. When we come back, we will transition over to some trade conversation. We'll look at some players we're a little worried about and maybe even considering panic selling, getting off our roster before it's too late.
I mentioned earlier in the show, I did well over the weekend with Prize Picks. Well, I also did well at betonline.net, and they've been a big sponsor of the Locked On Network for a long time. It's a great site. It's easy. It's the number one source for your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. It's more than just a betting site. Find all their latest football league developments, game matchup news. They have a podcast, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all sporting wagering information. There's live betting, esports, scores, all that good stuff. Fastest and easiest way to check all your favorite sports and events. Of course, they have baseball and everything you could look for, but MMA, boxing, golf has gotten really big as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts.
Matt, we said it was a wild week one, and a lot of that involved some very disappointing big name players around the league. And some of these from a dynasty perspective, because some of these were young players that we have been counting on. Let's run quickly here through some different positions. Let's start with the quarterback position. It was Justin Fields versus Trey Lance in the rain in Chicago, a very ugly game. Fields kind of came alive in the second half and led his team to victory. But from a fantasy standpoint, neither one of these guys looked good at all. No. Are you worried about either young quarterback?
Obviously the weather is a massive, factor here, but I'm worried about Lance staring down receivers and just quarterback stuff. I think Fields is the much better passer, developed quarterback at this stage. And Fields doesn't have a Jimmy looming. What if the Niners struggle the next 2 weeks? I think we're going to start hearing Jimmy talk. So I'm a little worried about Lance. Yeah.
I am as well. Not quite ready to panic sell on Trey Lance, but definitely worried. Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, a couple of veterans who had some poor performances as well. They're honestly kind of out of that panic sell range because their value has dropped so much, even in super flex leagues. It's not what it once was. 6 running backs here, Matt. Tell me which one you were most worried about after week one. Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and Cam Akers.
The bottom 2 for sure. I think Robinson's more of a factor in Jacksonville than I certainly would have liked. Right. And coaches seem to love him. He does all the dirty work. But, I know we're going to mention CeeDee Lamb too. I think Dallas's offense is going to be terrible. And the blocking's not great. Even more attention on Elliott. Akers can't seem to beat out Henderson. I'm not sure, but I do think that game that we all saw last Thursday will probably be the Rams' worst offensive performance of the year. Yeah. But I wish he was playing ahead of Henderson.
Yeah, that was, even though we had heard the kind of 1A, 1B through the offseason. That was still a surprise because it was not 1A, 1B. It was Henderson clearly as the guy and Akers as a backup at best. They were even playing the special team return man over Cam Akers at points in that game. Sounds like Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, the veterans, not quite as worried about those guys. That makes sense.
Not yet, no.
More established and in general better offenses than what Zeke or maybe even ETN might be dealing with. Let's do the same thing at the receiver position. I've got 6 guys there as well. Deebo Samuel, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and Devontae Smith. Who's the guy that you're most worried about from that group?
Mooney scared me months ago just because I don't think he's a real number one and he's going to be forced to be a number one in the real world. I'm not talking about fantasy.
Right.
And that usually doesn't work out. Like I might buy Mooney this offseason and when they draft, one of the studs early or sign somebody because I think that'll fit his role a little bit better. I still have a lot of hope for A-Rob. Smith worries me though. I mean, they feed AJ Brown at a remarkable level, and they're not going to be a high pass volume team.
Yeah, Smith has been a guy that I've been concerned with really since they made that trade because I didn't necessarily see that as a team, see the Eagles as a team that could support multiple targets. They also have Dallas Goedert there, obviously. So I've been worried about Smith. CeeDee Lamb. I mean, we already talked about the Cowboys and just how bad that offense could be and really will be without Dak Prescott. And obviously, CeeDee Lamb still has age on his side, but right now he's the wide receiver 3 in Dynasty ADP. And there's a lot of guys that I would pivot off of or pivot to from CeeDee Lamb right now, including even some on this list. I mean, if you can get Deebo Samuel plus for CeeDee Lamb right now, I think you probably have to do that.
Mike Williams plus I might do,
Right.
Yeah.
But
I might be buying Lamb in a month when he goes. I mean, receivers are so crazy. He's the wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. He could be 13 in 2 weeks. You know how quickly that happens. Then I'm interested because Dak's coming back and Gallup's coming back. I mean, I just think Lamb's in a brutal situation for the next 6 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Be sure to check out tomorrow's episode when we focus on Dynasty player value. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. That will do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.